The first shot rang out just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. It wasn't a hunter's measured crack, more like someone who didn't know what they were doing, panicking at the sound of their own gun. Out here, gunfire isn't exactly rare, but when it echoes from my property, my blood pressure spikes faster than the caffeine hit. The dogs went wild, barking toward the north pasture. That's where the bull was. My bull. Titan. 2,000 pounds of muscle, horns like size, and a temper that could flip a truck. Now, I'm not easily rattled. I've been running this ranch solo since my dad passed. 10 years of early mornings, busted knuckles, and more manure than I care to calculate. But hearing gunshots near Titan's paddock made my gut twist. I grabbed the rifle off the wall, not to use it, but because people who trespass with guns respect other guns more than words, and jumped into the truck. By the time I reached the fence line, my security cameras pinged my phone. Motion detected, 2 figures near the tree line, one in blaze orange, the other in jeans and a vest. The guy had a rifle. The woman, yep, you guessed it, was Karen. They'd moved in 2 months ago, into one of those overbuilt country estates on the neighboring subdivision's edge. HOA Queen Bee, clipboard in hand, the type who thought ranch meant 5 acres and a decorative horse statue. She'd already complained about my rooster crowing before sunrise and the smell of hay like she'd bought a house in the middle of New York, not rural Texas. But this was new. When I parked by the fence, I saw them through the binoculars. Karen pointing toward Titan's field, her husband crouched like some suburban commando. The guy actually raised his rifle and aimed at my bull. I jumped out of the truck, yelling across the wind, "Hey! You better not pull that trigger." The man froze, but Karen turned like I'd just interrupted her manicure. "Excuse me. We're on community land. My husband's a hunter. He has every right." "Community land?" I laughed, more out of disbelief than humor. "Lady, this is private property. That bull is worth more than your SUV." She scoffed, brushing invisible dust off her sleeve. "Well, maybe you should mark it better. The HOA said everything past the creek is communal. You people keep fencing off everything like you own the county." I pointed to the giant private ranch, "No trespassing" sign nailed to the post behind her. "Pretty sure that's clear enough." Her husband mumbled something, probably an apology, but Karen elbowed him like a stage director correcting a missed line. "Don't back down, Ron. He's bluffing. They always bluff." Who the hell was they? Before I could respond, a deep bellow thundered from the pasture. Titan had spotted them. He was pawing the ground, tail flicking, head low. Every bull owner knows that stance. It's not curiosity, it's intent. "Move away from the fence," I warned. Ron looked up, confused. Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh please, it's just a cow." Titan charged. The sound was like a freight train on fire, thunder and dirt and fury. Karen screamed as the bull slammed into the fence with enough force to bend steel. The posts rattled, but the barrier held. Barely. Titan's breath steamed in the morning air, his horns inches from her husband's rifle barrel. I shouted again, "Get out of there!" They finally scrambled back, tripping over roots and dignity alike. Karen's designer boots sank into mud as Ron tried to drag her up the hill. She kept yelling about how she'd call the HOA and report this animal, as if she had jurisdiction over a 1,000-pound bull. When they finally disappeared past the trees, I exhaled. Titan snorted once, stomped the ground like punctuation, and trotted off to his water trough, satisfied. By noon, I figured that was the end of it. Just another morning in the neighborhood. Then the email came. Subject line: Formal complaint, dangerous livestock incident. Karen had copied the local HOA board, the county sheriff, and, just for flavor, the Texas Department of Wildlife. Her version? Her husband had been peacefully scouting for deer when my unrestrained livestock attacked the community fence. She claimed property damage, emotional distress, and an aggressive bull posing a lethal threat to residents. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Then I realized, If she actually stirred up the county office, I'd be facing inspections, fines, maybe even forced relocation of Titan. So, I replied carefully. Professional tone. Attached time-stamped footage from my security cameras. I didn't even mention the trespassing law or the fact that firing a gun across private land without permission was a felony. I just asked one simple question. Would you like me to forward this evidence to the sheriff myself, or will you withdraw your complaint? She didn't respond. Instead, 2 days later, I noticed her husband driving a quad bike near the property line again. This time, he had camouflage gear and a rifle case strapped to the back. That's when I started to realize something deeper was brewing. It wasn't about hunting, it was about control. Karen couldn't stand that my land sat outside HOA jurisdiction. She'd already bullied 3 neighbors into repainting their mailboxes and trimming non-compliant hedges. But me? I was the reminder that she didn't run everything she could see from her patio. So she'd found a new angle, using her husband. The next weekend, I found boot prints past my north fence. My trail cameras picked up Ron again at 4:13 a.m., creeping through the mesquite line. He wasn't even hunting. He was posing, taking pictures with his rifle like some wannabe safari hero. I printed one still frame, a perfect shot of him standing under my private ranch sign, and mailed it anonymously to their HOA board. That's when the real fun started. Karen stormed over the next afternoon, hands on hips, hair sprayed into a battle helmet. "Did you send this?" she demanded, shoving the photo at me. I shrugged. "Looks like someone caught your husband trespassing." "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "This could ruin his reputation. He's a respected member of the community." "Then maybe he shouldn't break the law," I said, deadpan. Her lips twitched like she was holding back a scream. "You think you're clever, don't you? Hiding behind your fences, your animals, your little kingdom out here." "Lady," I said, turning to go back inside, "I'm not hiding. I'm minding my business. Maybe try it sometime." I shut the door before she could reply, but through the window I saw her standing there, silent, shaking. That kind of fury doesn't fade, it ferments. Sure enough, that night, Titan started bellowing again around midnight. When I went out with the flashlight, I saw movement near the barn. 2 figures. One holding what looked like, God help me, a crossbow. Who sneaks around a bull pen at night with a crossbow? That's when I knew this wasn't over. And if Karen wanted a war, I was ready to play the long game. When I saw the crossbow glint in my flashlight, my brain flipped from confusion to cold calculation. Whoever was out there had crossed the line from stupid to dangerous. Titan was still bellowing, the kind of deep, thunderous sound that made your chest vibrate. He wasn't scared, he was angry. I crouched behind the tractor, staying in the shadows. My first thought was to call the sheriff, but by the time anyone arrived, these 2 idiots would vanish back across the property line. I zoomed my flashlight just enough to confirm what I already suspected. Ron and Karen. Karen was standing 10 paces behind her husband, barking whispered orders like she was leading a special ops mission. "Aim lower, Ron. He's just an animal, make it quick." My stomach dropped. They were trying to kill Titan. I moved silently toward the side gate, unlatching it just enough for Titan to have a clear exit. The bull's instincts were sharper than most people's wits. He could sense movement, fear, adrenaline. If they wanted a confrontation, they were about to get one, only not on my terms. Ron raised the crossbow again. The string creaked. Titan's eyes caught the light, and something primal snapped inside him. He charged. The sound that came next was pure chaos. Wood splintering, Karen shrieking, Ron shouting "Run!" while Titan stormed through the half-open gate like a living avalanche. I switched on the floodlights. Every corner of the ranch lit up like midday, and sprinted after them. Ron dropped the crossbow and took off toward the fence, but Karen froze, staring at the charging bull like she couldn't process reality. Titan thundered past her, locked on Ron, horns lowered, tail whipping like a flag of war. I yelled, "Get down!" Karen screamed again, finally diving into the mud as Titan crashed through a row of barrels. Ron leapt over the fence, barely. His boot caught on the top rail, flipping him headfirst into the ditch on the other side. Titan skidded to a halt, snorted, and kicked dirt over the broken gate before turning back toward me, still huffing steam. "Good boy," I muttered, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Karen scrambled to her feet, her outfit now a swamp disaster. She spun toward me, face blotchy and eyes wide. "You could have killed us." I laughed out loud. "You were hunting my bull on private property with a weapon. You're lucky he didn't flatten you." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "I'll call the police. This was entrapment. You let that beast out on purpose." "You broke in," I said flatly. "You aimed a weapon. The cameras saw everything." Her eyes darted toward the barn, probably realizing the blinking red lights on my security system weren't just decoration. You recorded this?" "Of course. You think I trust you people after last time?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then she turned and stormed off, muttering something about lawsuits and animal control. Ron was still trying to climb out of the ditch, cursing the mud. I stood there under the floodlights, the adrenaline fading, replaced by that icy dread that comes when you realize the worst is yet to come. Because people like Karen don't stop when they're wrong. They double down. By morning, my inbox had exploded. One email from the HOA. One from Karen D., community president. One from some self-appointed neighborhood safety committee she'd apparently created overnight. They all read like court affidavits. Claims of reckless endangerment, animal cruelty, psychological trauma. She even attached photos of Ron's muddy clothes as evidence of an attack. I brewed a pot of coffee and forwarded the footage to Sheriff Cole before she could twist the story further. Cole's an old friend, tall, quiet, the kind of man who measures every word. When he arrived an hour later, he stepped out of his cruiser, took one look at the bent fence, the broken barrels, the hoof prints, and sighed. "Let me guess," he said. "Karen again." I nodded. "This time they brought weapons." He whistled low. "You've got footage?" I handed him my tablet. He watched in silence until Titan's charge sent Ron flying into the ditch. Then he smirked. "Well, that's poetic. You're not kidding." He rubbed his jaw. "Look, I'll file this as trespassing and unlawful discharge of a weapon on private property. You've got every right to press charges if you want." I hesitated. "Not yet. I want to see what she does first." Cole gave me that look lawmen give when they know you're about to do something clever, or stupid. "You sure about that?" "Oh yeah. If she wants a fight, I'll let her build the rope herself." He chuckled. "You always were the patient kind." That afternoon, Karen escalated exactly as I predicted. She held a so-called emergency HOA meeting, invited half the subdivision, and live-streamed it to the community Facebook page. My neighbor Sam sent me the link. There she was, standing at a podium in her immaculate living room, speaking like a politician who'd just survived a war zone. "We are under threat from dangerous livestock and an unstable property owner who refuses to follow community standards," she declared, waving printed screenshots of my ranch like they were criminal evidence. Someone off-camera asked, "Wait, isn't that private land?" Karen smiled thinly. "Technically, yes, but it's adjacent to our walking trails. We can petition the county to restrict livestock density for public safety." Public safety. From a bull that had never left his paddock until her husband broke in. She continued, "We must file a collective complaint. These animals are a liability. If we don't act, someone could be killed." I couldn't resist commenting from my official ranch page. "The only thing in danger was your husband's dignity. He trespassed with a weapon. Sheriff's report incoming." The comments section exploded. Half the community sided with me, the other half with her. Neighbors I'd never met suddenly had opinions about rural ethics and community harmony. By the next day, The post had over 400 comments and 3 separate memes of Ron facedown in the ditch. That's when the sheriff called again. "Thought you should know," Cole said. "Karen filed a restraining order." I almost spat out my drink. "Against who?" "You. And the bull." "The bull?" "Yep. Says Titan's presence causes her emotional distress. Wants him relocated or euthanized." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "She's unbelievable." Cole sighed. "The paperwork won't hold up, but she's stirring noise with animal control. You might get a visit." Sure enough, the next morning, a county truck rolled up my driveway. The officer, young guy, nervous smile, looked like he'd drawn the short straw. "Mr. Lane," he asked, "we got a call about an aggressive bull." I gestured toward Titan, peacefully grazing under the oak tree like the picture of serenity. "Yup. Real menace, isn't he?" The officer chuckled awkwardly. "Can I see his enclosure?" I led him around, showing the reinforced fencing, the feed shed, the automatic waterers. All up to code, pristine. He took notes, nodded, and finally said, "Honestly, sir, this is one of the best setups I've seen. Whoever complained doesn't know livestock." "Her name's Karen," I said. "You'll learn." He grinned. "Well, consider this closed. But, you didn't hear it from me. She's already called 3 other departments about you. Fire safety, zoning, noise ordinances. Of course she has." By the time he drove off, I was done playing defense. That night, I set up extra trail cams, replaced the batteries in the motion lights, and installed a small loudspeaker system by the north pasture. I wasn't going to hurt anyone, but I wanted deterrence. At 2:47 a.m., the sensors pinged again. Motion detected. I switched to the live feed and nearly choked laughing. Ron was back, wearing full camouflage and holding what looked like a tranquilizer gun. Karen stood behind him, waving a flashlight like she was directing traffic. "Try again, Ron. Just hit the beast and it'll calm down," she yelled. I turned on the loudspeaker. My voice boomed from the darkness. "Trespassing again, huh?" Ron screamed. Dropped the dart gun. Titan roared from the shadows. Karen shrieked so loud the mic clipped. They both bolted toward the trees, tripping over each other like cartoon burglars. I saved every frame. The next morning, I called Sheriff Cole. "Got another one for you," I said. He sounded half amused, half exasperated. At this point, I should start a Karen file. You might need a whole cabinet. But this time, I wasn't just handing him footage. I had a plan. If Karen wanted to drag me through every bureaucratic loophole she could find, I'd show her what a rancher with time and legal experience could do. And the first step? Let the county know exactly who she was, and what she'd done on camera. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, because I was planning. Karen thought she was clever, using bureaucracy as her weapon. But bureaucracy cuts both ways. I'd played this game before, years back, when a developer tried to strong-arm my dad into selling our land for a golf course. The trick wasn't brute force, it was patience, paperwork, and precision. By dawn, I had a pot of black coffee, a stack of evidence folders, and a to-do list long enough to qualify as a legal strategy. The sun rose behind the barn, catching the dust in gold. Titan stood in his pasture, calm as a monk, chewing cud like last night's chaos never happened. I envied that kind of peace. The first call I made was to the county zoning office. I explained that the HOA next door had been expanding community walking trails without permission, cutting paths too close to my fence line. That was technically true. Karen's nature path was basically a muddy trench carved by her husband's ATV. The clerk took notes, promised an inspection, and asked if I had photos. "Oh, I have videos," I said. Next call, the Department of Wildlife. I submitted the footage of Ron hunting, without a license, and discharging a weapon, within a restricted distance of livestock. The officer sounded very interested when I mentioned a crossbow and night activity. Then I sent an email to the sheriff's office, CC'd the HOA board, attaching a neat little packet of time-stamped security clips labeled Repeated Criminal Trespass and Endangerment Evidence. The subject line read, Community Safety Report. By 10 a.m., I'd fired 3 bureaucratic warning shots. And I wasn't done. Sam, my neighbor down the road, dropped by around noon. He's an old rancher with the humor of a man who's seen it all. He brought donuts and that knowing smirk that says you've stirred the hornet's nest, haven't you? Heard the commotion last night, he said, handing me a maple bar. Karen's still trying to turn the countryside into a country club? Worse, I said. She's trying to get my bull euthanized. Sam chuckled, then got serious. You gonna press charges? Not yet. I want her to think she's winning. That's when she'll make a mistake big enough to end it. He nodded slowly. Just make sure that mistake doesn't involve that bull of yours breaking through the wrong fence. I grinned. Titan's smarter than half the county. He knows who the idiots are. Later that day, the zoning officer showed up. Clipboard, badge, fresh college degree energy. He introduced himself as Alan and started snapping photos along the north fence. Karen must have seen his truck because 5 minutes later she came marching over, sunglasses on, fury radiating like heat shimmer. Excuse me, she snapped. Why are you on our trail? Alan frowned. Ma'am, this is unregistered development on non-HOA land. We're investigating boundary violations. Her jaw dropped. That's absurd. It's a community amenity. I organized volunteers for this. Then you might want to check with the county before carving trails on private easements, Alan said evenly. I watched from my porch, sipping lemonade, pretending not to listen. Karen's voice kept rising until Alan had to hold up his clipboard like a shield. When he finally walked back toward me, he looked both frazzled and amused. Mr. Lane, he said quietly, she might be the most stubborn person I've ever met. You get used to it, I said. Kind of like a seasonal allergy. He laughed. Well, we'll be issuing a stop order on their construction. Looks like they built about 20 feet onto your property. That made me pause. 20 feet. Yes, sir. Technically, you could sue for damages. I smiled. Technically, I could. By sunset, word had spread through the entire neighborhood. The HOA's community trail was shut down pending investigation. Karen's social media feed turned from righteous crusade to passive-aggressive meltdown. Posts like, "Some people just can't coexist peacefully," and "Entitlement runs deep in rural areas," flooded her page. The irony was delicious, but she wasn't done fighting. At 8 p.m., I heard engines. Headlights cut through the dark. 2 ATVs crawling along the property line. Karen and Ron again, flanked by another man I didn't recognize. They stopped near the fence, voices carrying over the quiet. That's him, Karen said. He's the one sabotaging everything. The stranger, tall, heavy-set, wearing a county uniform, stepped forward. Mr. Lane, he called. I walked out onto the porch, keeping my tone calm. Evening. Something I can help with. Name's Dennis. Fire Safety Inspector. Got a complaint about hazardous materials stored near livestock enclosures. Let me guess, anonymous? He shrugged. That's how it came in. Karen crossed her arms like she'd just played a trump card. See? Told you we'd get the county involved. I gestured toward the barn. Be my guest. Dennis followed me inside, scanning the shelves of feed, tools, and sealed chemical containers. He nodded approvingly. Everything's labeled and stored correctly. You even have secondary containment. Karen poked her head in, voice sharp. Check that blue barrel. It smells toxic. Dennis lifted the lid. It was molasses feed. Titan snorted behind us like he was laughing. The inspector chuckled. Ma'am, that's livestock supplement. Karen's face went crimson. Well, maybe the fumes are dangerous. They're sugar, Dennis said dryly. Unless you're diabetic, you're safe. When they finally left, Ron muttered something about lawyers. I just waved. Bring all the lawyers you want. Just remember to stay off my land. I figured that would be the end of the week's chaos. But Karen wasn't a one-act show. She was a saga. 2 days later, I got an official letter, an HOA notice of nuisance violation. According to their paperwork, my bull was disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of the community through frequent noise and intimidation. They gave me 7 days to rectify the issue or face fines. That was the moment I decided to end it for good. The next morning, I met with Sheriff Cole again. He listened to the whole saga, shaking his head. When I showed him the night footage of the tranquilizer gun attempt, his jaw set. "You've given her every chance," he said. "Time to press charges." "I agree," I said. "But I want to do it clean. No headlines, no drama. Just paperwork and truth." He smiled. "You really are your father's son." We filed the complaint that afternoon. Criminal trespass, attempted animal cruelty, unlawful discharge of a weapon. Ron's name was on the paperwork. Karen's was on the witness list. By Friday, a deputy delivered the summons to their front door. Sam called me an hour later, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Buddy," she was screaming on the porch, something about political corruption and conspiracies. I thought she was gonna explode. That night, I poured myself a whiskey and sat out on the porch with Titan grazing in the distance. For the first time in weeks, the air felt quiet, peaceful, until headlights appeared again. One vehicle this time, a sleek black SUV. It pulled up slow, tires crunching on gravel. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a county badge and suit jacket. "Mr. Lane," she said, professional smile in place. "I'm Deputy DA Melissa Crane. Mind if we talk?" I gestured to the porch chairs. "Sure. Coffee or whiskey?" "Coffee," she said, sitting down. "I reviewed the footage Sheriff Cole sent. You've got a rock-solid case. But I need to warn you, Mrs. Donovan's already filed counterclaims. Harassment, defamation, emotional distress. It's all nonsense, but it'll slow things down." I sighed. "That's her specialty, wasting everyone's time." "She's also petitioned the county to classify your bull as a public safety hazard," Melissa added. "She's trying to get an emergency removal order." I laughed in disbelief. "After she tried to shoot him?" Melissa smiled faintly. "Yeah. It's ridiculous, but the hearing's next week. I'll be there. Just keep everything documented." As she left, she turned and said, "You know, she's underestimated you. Most folks would have lost their temper by now." I looked out at the field, where Titan was pawing the dirt under moonlight. "That's her mistake. I don't lose my temper. I plan." And as if the universe wanted to underscore that, my motion cameras pinged again. North fence, near the broken trail. 2 heat signatures. One carrying what looked like a bucket. I zoomed in. Karen and Ron again. This time, pouring something along my fence line. I didn't know what it was yet, but the smell, when the wind shifted, told me it wasn't water. It was gasoline. When I smelled gasoline on the night breeze, something inside me turned ice cold. That wasn't petty revenge anymore, it was arson. I froze for half a second, just long enough for my brain to catch up to what my gut already knew. Karen and Ron were trying to burn my property. Titan snorted from the pasture, uneasy. The dogs started barking. I grabbed the flashlight in one hand and the phone in the other, already dialing the sheriff. Then I saw the flicker, one small orange spark near the fence line. Ron had struck a lighter. I shouted before I thought, "Don't you dare!" They spun around like kids caught stealing candy, except this wasn't candy, it was fuel spread across 30 feet of my wooden fencing. Ron's face went pale. Karen hissed, "Run!" But he hesitated too long. Titan bellowed. The bull's roar echoed through the fields like a war drum. He wasn't charging, yet, but he was fully alert, muscles tensed, watching the 2 intruders at the edge of his domain. Karen grabbed Ron's sleeve, dragging him toward their ATV parked near the trail, but her boot slipped in the mud and she went down hard. The lighter skidded away, landing right in the wet patch of gasoline. I sprinted down the hill, yelling, Get away from there! Ron scrambled upright, panicking, and stomped the lighter out just in time. The gasoline didn't ignite, but the smell was everywhere now, thick and nauseating. My flashlight beam caught the glimmer of a red can still half full. The sirens came faster than I expected. Sheriff Cole must have had a deputy nearby, because within minutes red and blue lights cut through the dark. Karen and Ron froze like deer, caught mid-crime. Cole stepped out first, hand on his belt, jaw tight. "Evening, folks. You want to explain what you're doing?" Karen's voice went shrill. We were cleaning up debris from his fence. It smelled like chemicals. We were trying to neutralize it. Ron nodded frantically, eyes wide. "Yeah, that's it. We thought it was leaking something dangerous." Cole looked at me. "Mr. Lane, did you call this in?" "Yep," I said. "Security cameras caught them pouring fuel. Lighter too." He sighed. "Show me." We walked back to the porch where my monitor showed crystal clear footage. Karen dragging the gas can, Ron splashing it along the fence line, both whispering heatedly. Then the lighter, the spark, the panic. Cole didn't say a word for a long minute. Then he turned to his deputy. "Cuff him." Ron started protesting immediately, babbling about misunderstandings and community service projects, but the deputy had already pulled out the cuffs. Karen lunged forward, screaming, "You can't arrest him. He's the victim. That man's been tormenting us for weeks." Cole's voice was calm but hard. "Ma'am, you're lucky that fence didn't catch. If it had, we'd be looking at felony arson. As it stands, we've got attempted property damage and trespass, again." She stomped her foot, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. He's been harassing us, recording us, turning the whole town against us." I crossed my arms. "You're doing a fine job of that yourself." For the first time, Karen seemed genuinely shaken, not angry, not self-righteous, but cornered. She looked between me, the sheriff, and her husband, who was now sitting in the back of the cruiser with his head in his hands. "Please," she whispered. "He didn't mean to. He just lost control." Cole didn't soften. "Then maybe it's time you two stop testing everyone's patience." The deputy drove off with Ron, the lights fading into the distance. Karen stood there trembling, mascara streaked, hair limp in the wind. She wasn't the HOA queen anymore. She looked like someone who'd finally realized her game had gone too far. "You should go home," I said quietly. She glared at me, but there was no real heat in it. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" I shrugged. "Depends how long you plan to keep losing." She turned and walked away, her steps slow and uneven. When the last sound of the cruiser faded, the ranch fell silent again. Titan wandered over to the broken section of fence, sniffed the ground, then looked up at me like he knew exactly what had almost happened. I scratched his forehead and muttered, "Good boy. We'll fix it in the morning." But sleep didn't come easy that night. I sat on the porch until dawn, listening to the crickets and wondering what kind of person looked at fire and thought that's the solution. The next day was chaos. The HOA Facebook group had exploded again. Apparently Karen had posted a long statement about false accusations and targeted harassment by vindictive neighbors. But this time, the tide had turned. People were starting to see through her act. Comments flooded in. "Wait, wasn't her husband arrested? Didn't she threaten to sue animal control? She's out of control." For the first time, Karen wasn't leading a mob, she was the mob target. Still, I wasn't about to relax. The county prosecutor, Melissa, called that afternoon to confirm that charges were being upgraded. "We've got clear intent," she said. "Fuel, ignition source, and video evidence. It's airtight." I thanked her, then asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "What about Karen? She's listed as an accessory, but with Ron in custody she'll probably focus on damage control. Expect noise, not action." Noise. That was an understatement. That evening, my phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers, blocked callers, spam emails accusing me of framing a good man. Karen had unleashed every trick in the HOA playbook, but her credibility was collapsing fast. Even her own board members started resigning, citing leadership disagreements. 3 days later, Sheriff Cole dropped by again, leaning on his cruiser with that same tired grin. "Got some good news," he said. Ron confessed. Said it was all his idea, tried to protect his wife. I raised an eyebrow. "You believe that?" Cole shrugged. "I believe he's scared enough to say anything. But either way, it helps your case." I nodded, though part of me felt oddly hollow. Watching them implode wasn't as satisfying as I expected. Maybe because deep down I knew people like Karen never really learned. They just waited. Sure enough, that waiting didn't last long. The next weekend, I heard the familiar sound of Karen's voice outside my gate. Not yelling this time, pleading. "Please, just a minute," she called. "I need to talk." Against my better judgment, I opened the gate. She stood there clutching a folder, looking smaller somehow. "They're saying I might lose the house," she said. "The HOA's suing me for damages. The county froze our accounts. Ron's lawyer says we can't afford bail unless we sell." I studied her carefully. The arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because you could help," she said. "If you dropped the complaint, just said it was a misunderstanding, we could make this right. We could even sign a peace agreement. I'll keep the HOA off your land forever." For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But pity doesn't erase gasoline and fire. "I'm not dropping anything," I said. "You didn't just trespass. You tried to destroy what I built." Tears welled up again. "You don't understand. He just wanted to scare you. He thought if you sold the property we could." I held up a hand. "Stop. You wanted me gone, and now you're the one leaving. That's the universe balancing the books." Her expression hardened, the old Karen flashing through. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? You ruined us." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves." She left without another word. The next day, movers showed up. I watched from the porch as boxes piled into a truck, her SUV following behind. No grand confrontation, no final speech, just the sound of tires crunching down the gravel road until the dust settled. Sam stopped by that evening with a grin. "So the HOA queen's gone, huh? Looks that way." He chuckled. "I give it a month before she files a complaint from wherever she ends up." "Probably," I said, smiling. "But at least it won't be here." Titan huffed beside the fence, calm again. The fields were quiet, the fences repaired, the sky washed clean by a fresh breeze. For the first time in months, peace didn't feel temporary. It felt earned. But as I sat there watching the sunset bleed across the horizon, I caught a glint of light near the property line, something metallic, half buried in the dirt. I walked over, curious. It was a small hunting tag, engraved with a name. Ronald Donovan, hunting license number 4723. The date was next week. He'd renewed it. And just like that, I knew this wasn't over. I stared at that hunting tag longer than I should have, the metal catching the evening light like it was mocking me. The date stamped on it, next week, wasn't an accident. Ron might have been facing charges, but the man had renewed his hunting license while sitting in jail. Either he was planning for the future, or he had friends willing to make sure his revenge came with paperwork attached. The uneasy quiet on the ranch that week didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm, still, heavy, waiting for something to break. Even Titan seemed restless, pacing the fence lines more than usual. I tightened security. New locks, motion sensors, fresh barbed wire where the fence met the wood. 3 days later, Sheriff Cole called. "Ron posted bail," he said simply. I set down my coffee. "You're kidding." "Wish I was. Some friend wired the money. He's under restriction, can't leave the county, can't possess firearms, but keep your cameras running. I've got a bad feeling about this. Join the club." That night, I made sure the floodlights stayed on. The ranch glowed like a fortress under the moon. But as the hours passed, nothing happened. No movement, no sound, just the wind rustling the mesquite and the low grunt of Titan bedding down for the night. I almost convinced myself maybe, just maybe, this would end quietly. Then came the message. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words, "Nice bull." I froze, staring at the screen. I zoomed in on the security feed, scanning every camera angle. Nothing. Then, faintly, near the north pasture, I saw the reflection of eyes, human, not animal, catching the infrared glow. Someone was out there, crouched near the fence line, watching. I grabbed the flashlight and my rifle, not to shoot, just to remind whoever it was that this wasn't the kind of place you sneaked around uninvited. By the time I reached the gate, the figure was gone. Just footprints pressed deep into the mud. Heavy boots, size 11, same tread pattern I'd seen on my earlier footage. Ron. The next morning, I called Cole again. He sent a deputy to log it, but without a face on camera, it was just suspicious activity. Ron knew exactly how far he could push without crossing a legal line. That's what made him dangerous now. He wasn't impulsive anymore. He was calculating. Sam came by mid-afternoon, his usual humor replaced by concern. "You're not thinking of handling this yourself, are you?" I shrugged. "Depends what you mean by handle." He sighed. "Look, you've already got him on tape trying to torch your fence. Let the law do its job. Don't give him an excuse to flip the story." "I won't," I said. "But I'm not gonna sit here waiting for him to make the next move either." Sam nodded reluctantly. "Just be smart, Lane." I was. I always was. That evening, I installed 2 new cameras, one high in the oak tree overlooking the pasture, another under the eaves of the barn, both with long-range night vision. If Ron wanted to play ghost hunter, I'd make sure every move he made was recorded. By midnight, the temperature had dropped, fog creeping low across the fields. I sat inside watching the monitors, every pixel of grainy black and white. Titan stood by the fence, breathing slow clouds into the mist. The stillness was eerie, like the world was holding its breath. Then the bull's head snapped toward the treeline. I saw it at the same time he did, movement. A faint silhouette creeping along the fence, flashlight flickering. A man crouched, holding something long. The rifle was illegal, but that didn't seem to bother him. I whispered, "Got you." I hit record, zoomed in. Ron stepped into view, scruffy, eyes wild, hands trembling on the stock. He wasn't alone. Behind him, half hidden by the trees, Karen's silhouette hovered, whispering furiously. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language screamed desperation. She was trying to stop him. He shoved her back. The rifle lifted. Toward Titan. My heart hammered. I shouted out the window, "Hey! Don't even think about it." The sound startled him. His aim faltered, the shot went wide, echoing across the pasture. Titan bellowed, furious, and charged straight at the noise. Ron stumbled backward, dropped the rifle, and ran. Karen screamed, tripping in the mud as Titan's hooves thundered closer. I grabbed my truck keys, speeding across the property just as Titan slammed against the fence. The barrier flexed, cracked, but held. Barely. Ron and Karen fled into the dark, their flashlight bouncing wildly as they disappeared into the woods. By the time Cole arrived, I had the footage ready. He watched the screen silently, then exhaled through his nose. "You weren't exaggerating." "Nope. That was an actual shot fired this time." He rubbed his temples. "All right. I'm issuing a warrant for firearm possession and violation of bail. We'll pick him up." But the next morning, when the deputies went to the Donovan's house, it was empty. Furniture gone, doors unlocked, a "for sale" sign staked in the yard. Cole called me. "Looks like they ran." "Where?" "Unknown. No credit cards, no cell pings. My guess? Out of state." For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe that was it. Maybe they were gone for good. But later that evening, I found a small package on my porch. No return address. Inside, a bullet casing, polished clean, and a scrap of paper that read, You'll never be safe with that monster. My stomach turned. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the barn, every gust of wind felt like someone lurking outside. Titan, too, seemed uneasy. He kept pacing the fence, snorting at shadows. I told myself it was just nerves. But deep down, I knew people like Ron don't vanish quietly. They circle back. The next morning, I met with Melissa, the deputy DA. She examined the casing bagged in evidence. "This is intimidation," she said. "He's taunting you. But he's also stupid. Mailing threats leaves fingerprints. Can we trace it? We'll try. Postal inspectors can run print. If he's on record, we'll get a match." I nodded. "Good. Because if he steps foot here again, someone's gonna get hurt." "Don't do anything reckless," she warned. "We'll handle it." But the law was moving too slow for my liking. I had a bull worth 50 grand, land worth 6 figures, and a lunatic with a grudge. That night, I reinforced Titan's paddock with steel crossbars, strong enough to stop a truck. The following dawn brought a strange calm. Mist hung low again, soft light spilling over the fields. Titan was grazing peacefully, tail flicking lazily. For the first time in days, it almost felt normal. Until I heard the engine. A low, rumbling growl of a pickup coming up the back road, the private one that wasn't even on GPS. I grabbed the binoculars and looked. The truck was black, unmarked, tires caked in red clay. Behind the wheel, Ron. He was back. The tailgate dropped. He stepped out, shotgun in hand. Everything inside me snapped into focus. I didn't feel fear, just clarity. I picked up my phone, hit the panic button for the sheriff, and ran toward the ATV. Titan had already noticed the movement. His head was up, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled. Ron raised the shotgun. I shouted across the distance, "You take that shot and you'll never walk again." He didn't even flinch. "That thing's dangerous. It attacked me." "You attacked him," I yelled. He aimed, then a deafening bellow cut through the air. Titan exploded into motion. The fence splintered under his weight, wood flying like shrapnel. Ron's eyes went wide. He fired once, panic shot, missed completely. Then he ran. But Titan was faster. The bull hit him mid-stride, tossing him like a rag doll into the ditch. The shotgun clattered away. Titan reared, hooves pounding the ground inches from Ron's head. I sprinted forward, shouting, "Titan! Whoa! Easy, boy!" It took every ounce of authority I had, but finally the bull backed off, snorting, eyes blazing. Ron lay on his back, gasping, covered in mud. When the sheriff's sirens wailed minutes later, I stepped aside and let them take over. Cole took one look at the scene and shook his head. "I told you he'd come back." "He almost didn't leave," I said. Ron was loaded into the ambulance, babbling something about self-defense and demonic animals. Karen wasn't there. Not this time. As they drove off, Cole turned to me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, exhaling hard. "But Titan's earned himself another medal." Cole smiled faintly. "You know this story's gonna end up all over town, right?" "Good," I said. "Maybe next time someone thinks about trespassing, they'll remember the bull." But as the ambulance disappeared down the road, I noticed something glittering in the ditch. A camera. A body cam, half buried in mud, blinking red. Ron had been recording. The body cam blinked red like a heartbeat, half buried in the ditch where Ron had fallen. I picked it up carefully, wiping off the mud with the corner of my shirt. The casing was cracked, but it was still recording. That alone told me more than I wanted to know. Ron hadn't come back to kill Titan this time. He'd come back to film something. To twist the story again. When Sheriff Cole saw it, his expression darkened. "You think he was trying to fake a self-defense video?" "Exactly," I said. "He probably wanted footage of Titan charging so he could claim the bull attacked unprovoked." Cole whistled low. Man was digging his own grave and didn't even realize it. We drove back to the station with the body cam sealed in an evidence bag. The tech team downloaded the footage, and within an hour, we were watching the entire scene unfold from Ron's perspective. The shaky frame showed him sneaking onto the property, muttering into the camera. "See? This is it," he whispered. "The bull's been stalking the fence line for days. Dangerous animal. Choi was right. This guy's letting it roam." The next few minutes were grainy but damning. He poured something from a small bottle, pheromones, maybe, to lure Titan closer. Then Karen's voice off camera. "Ron, stop this. Please. You'll just make it worse." He ignored her, walking closer to the fence. "If it attacks me, we'll have proof." Then came my shout, the gunshot, and Titan's charge. The footage cut off mid-scream, ending with the camera tumbling into the ditch. Cole leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. "Well, that's that. Attempted fraud, baiting livestock, trespassing, illegal firearm possession. He's stacked enough charges to fill a courthouse." "Good," I said quietly. "Because I'm done being patient." Cole nodded. "You've earned it. And don't worry. This footage clears you completely. The DA's gonna love it." When I left the station, the air outside felt cleaner somehow, like the storm was finally starting to pass. For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe it might actually end here. But when I got home, Karen was waiting by the gate. She looked worse than I'd ever seen her, hair disheveled, face pale, dark circles under her eyes. The SUV she drove was packed full of boxes, her life condensed into cardboard and desperation. "Please," she said as soon as I stepped out of the truck. "You have to listen." I sighed. "Karen, you shouldn't be here." "I know," she said quickly. I needed to say this before I leave." I didn't respond, just crossed my arms and waited. "They're taking Ron to a psychiatric facility," she said. "They said he's not stable enough for trial. He keeps saying the bull's cursed, that it talks to him at night." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know who he is anymore." I stared at her, trying to decide if I believed any of it. "You helped him," I said finally. "You pushed every button, stirred every fire, until it blew up in your face. Don't act like you didn't see it coming." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "At first it was just about the HOA. The property lines, the complaints. I wanted order, structure. But when you kept defying us, defying me, he took it personally. He thought I was embarrassed. So he started doing things without telling me. And you went along with it," I said. Tears welled up again. "Because I didn't want him to leave me. He said you were dangerous, that he had to protect me. I thought if we just scared you off, it would stop." There it was. The same excuse people always give when they run out of control. Blame fear. Blame someone else. "I'm not your therapist, Karen," I said. "You made your choices." She nodded, trembling. "I know. That's why I'm leaving. The HOA's done with me, the neighbors hate me, and the county seized our account. I've got nothing left." She took a step closer, holding out a small envelope. "But I don't want to leave it like this. This is for you." I hesitated before taking it. Inside was a folded photograph, an old picture of my father standing in front of the barn, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. On the back, in faded ink, "Thanks for keeping us honest, R.D." I looked up sharply. "R.D.? Ron's initials." She nodded weakly. "Our fathers knew each other. A long time ago, before any of this. I found that in an old box last week. Maybe it means something." I stared at the photo, the past suddenly cutting through the present like a knife. My dad had mentioned once that he'd helped a young ranch hand from town get started years ago, taught him fencing, gave him spare feed, even vouched for him on a land lease. Could that have been Ron's father? The irony hit like a gut punch. My dad had helped his family, and now his son had tried to destroy mine. Karen's voice trembled. "I thought maybe he hated you because of that. Because he thought your family got everything his didn't." I folded the photo carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. "If that's true, then this whole thing started long before either of us realized." She nodded slowly. "Please don't hate him. Or me. We just lost the plot somewhere along the way." I didn't say anything. She turned to leave, stopping just long enough to add, "The DA said the hearing's next week. They'll probably ask you to testify." "I won't fight it. I just want to disappear." "Then disappear," I said softly. "But don't come back." She gave a sad little smile, then climbed into the SUV. The engine started, tires crunching on gravel, and she drove away without looking back. I stood there long after the sound faded, the photograph heavy in my hand. Titan wandered over, nudging my arm like he could sense the tension. I scratched behind his ear and muttered, "You and me, buddy. Looks like we outlasted the storm." But even as I said it, I didn't fully believe it. The piece felt too thin, too fragile. The next few days passed in slow motion. Reporters called, of course. Stories like this don't stay buried in small towns. Headlines popped up online. Ranch dispute turns violent. Bull saves owner from armed intruder. Most people sided with me, but a few sensational outlets twisted it into clickbait, painting Ron as unstable but misunderstood. I ignored them all. Then, the night before the hearing, I got another package. Smaller this time, no address. Inside was a single flash drive. I almost tossed it straight into the trash. But curiosity got the better of me. I plugged it into the laptop. The screen flickered, grainy footage, security cam angle, but not mine. It was from their house. Karen and Ron, sitting at a kitchen table littered with papers, HLA binders, and empty wine glasses. They were arguing. Ron slammed his fist down. "You think this is about fences? It's about power. That man doesn't get to make us look weak." Karen shot back, "He's not making us look weak, Ron. You are. You're obsessed." He laughed bitterly. "You'll thank me when he's gone. I'll make sure of it." Then, chillingly calm, he leaned closer to the camera, like he knew it was recording, and said, "If anything happens, tell them it was the bull." The video ended there. I sat back, heart pounding. Whoever sent that had just buried any chance of Ron claiming innocence. It was confession by camera. I called Melissa immediately. She picked up on the first ring. "You need to see this," I said. Within an hour, she was at the ranch with a deputy, both watching the footage in silence. When it ended, Melissa exhaled. "This nails it. Not just the attack, everything. The false reports, the trespassing, the arson. It's all premeditated." "Who do you think sent it?" I asked. "Could have been Karen," she said. "Maybe her way of closing the chapter. Or starting a new one," I muttered. The next morning, the hearing went exactly as expected. Ron was ruled mentally unfit for trial, transferred to a long-term facility. Karen took a plea for obstruction and falsified complaints. No jail time, but permanent ban from HLA boards and a restraining order to keep her 50 miles away from my property. When the gavel dropped, it should have felt like victory. But it didn't. It just felt quiet. As I drove home, the sun was setting over the ranch again, painting the sky in bruised orange and gold. Titan stood near the broken fence line, calm and unbothered, chewing lazily. The land smelled clean again. No gasoline, no smoke, no fear. Still, as I passed the mailbox, I noticed one last thing taped to the post. A note written in neat cursive. "Thank you for saving me from him." No signature. I didn't need one.